So what's the best way to use the 1RM continuum and rep scheme? So I'm assuming the person is referring to the poster that we have on our website, where you have the 1RM continuum, which is from 1 to 20 reps, and which percentage of intensity compared to a 1 rep max each rep is associated to. Like 85% of 1RM, 5 reps. Typically people will do 5 reps on big compound lifts. So just to be clear, that 1RM continuum is only relevant to multi-joint compound movements. If you're doing like wrist curls at 85% of your 1RM, it's not going to be 5 reps. It's going to be way more, okay? So you have to keep that in mind. Now, that 1RM continuum, if you look on that poster, there's intensity ranges or rep ranges that are associated to a strength quality. So for example, 1 to 5 reps, which is 85 to 100%, this is associated to relative strength. So when you train into that zone, the primary training effect you get out of training into that zone is one of relative strength, which means that you're gaining strength with minimal gains in hypertrophy. Now, if you're training, for example, between 78 to 83% of 1RM, which is 6 to 8 reps, now the strength quality you gain from that training is one of functional hypertrophy. So it's gains in hypertrophy associated with a good neural component to it. So it's hypertrophy that the brain, that the nervous system still has an easy time to go and recruit. Hence the term functional hypertrophies. You can actually use that size that you've built for activities like alignment in football, for example. Functional hypertrophy is a great quality to train for that. Now, if you're training between 70 to 76%, now you're in that like 8 to 12 rep range, which is the traditional hypertrophy bracket. So if you train into that zone, you will gain strength, but the main response, the main focus will be one of hypertrophy. And then if you train anywhere from 60 to 68%, so 13 to 20 reps, then it's straight endurance. So the duration of the set is so long that the main response is one of endurance. Now, technically speaking, strength endurance can be trained all the way down to 30% of 1RM, but that 1RM continuum stops at 20. So now, to answer the question, now that you understand this, it's very simple. If you're creating a program and then you're about to write a phase, so phase 1, and then you want that client for phase 1 to be focused on purely hypertrophy, because let's say the lifter is skinnier, and you know that if we don't build a little bit hypertrophy base, his potential for strain won't be high. So then you know that phase, you should be between that 70 to 76% range if you want this to be the main focus. So now let's say the phase after, now you want him all of a sudden to focus on relative strength, then you know that phase needs to be between 85 to 100%, so you get a relative strength response from that specific phase. So mesocycles, so training phase, those your little 3-week phases, is always in relation to which strength quality you want to focus on. Now the rep schemes, under each strength quality associated to each intensity, you have a bunch of rep schemes. So let's say we have a 8-8-6-6-4-4 rep scheme, which is a stage descending. Now, how do you figure out what the average intensity of this is? Because now the reps are changing, they're all over the place. So what you do is you add every rep and their associated intensity and you average it out. So 8 reps is 78%. So you would do 8-8, so 78 plus 78. 6 reps is 83%, 83 plus 83. And then 4 reps is 88%, so 88 plus 88. You would add these 6 values and divide them by 6, and it would give you that 83% average. So now you know that the 8-8-6-6-4-4 stage descending is an average intensity of 83%. So now if I want to work on a phase where my focus is functional hypertrophy, then you know that you can prescribe 886644, and the response will be one that fits the strength quality you were focusing on for that phase. Okay, so that's how you use this. Do I consider if an athlete is more slow twitch or fast twitch when I'm programming? Yes and no. So yes, in the sense that their fiber makeup will give me a good indication of how much volume they can tolerate. Okay, so the faster twitch will tend to tolerate a little less volume than the slower twitch. But the reality, though, is I don't pay much attention to this when it comes to selecting my intensities or my reps for that matter. Simply because, and we're talking about athletes here, simply because, let's say that I'm training a NFL wide receiver. Okay, I mean, the odds that an NFL wide receiver is slow twitch are kind of low, but let's say that I have an NFL wide receiver that's slow twitch, and we're training him. And now we're getting into the specific preparation phase, and we're getting to the point where we're peaking before the season. Even if he's slow twitch, it's not like I'm going to peak that athlete with sets of 8 because he's slow twitch. It's just like the sets of 8 would not make any sense for the purpose of the last phase of my SPP when I'm trying to work on speed strength and improve like either explosive strength or reactive strength or whatever it might be. It just makes no sense on a nervous system perspective. So because of the methods and the training techniques used in the SPP, because of the nature of those, it forces you to stay in the higher intensity bracket irrespective of the fiber makeup of the athlete. So you see, that's how I mean that. That's why I'm saying that I don't really pay attention to it in terms of reps, simply because the nature of certain phases doesn't allow you to use a broad spectrum of intensity. But the fiber makeup, like I said, will give me an idea of how much volume I can play with. What's my opinion on band-assisted chin-ups? Good question. It's something I get often in class. I'm not a fan, and the reason is the chin-up is a descending strength curve movement, which means that in the stretch position, so in the bottom, it's easier, and as you're pulling yourself up, it becomes harder and harder and harder. So that top position is the hardest point of the movement. Now, a lot of people who can't do chins, they use the band that they loop on the post and attach at their ankle or knee, and they use the stretch of the band to create momentum for them concentrically, which allows them to do reps. But the problem is you have someone, they're doing their chins with the bands, and now they're able to do 6 or 7 reps. And now they feel confident because they're doing 6 or 7 reps. Then you ask them to do a chin-ups without the band, and they can't do one. They can't do one where the chin actually clears the bar. They just can't. And then they're like, but how can I do a chin? I just did 6 or 7 with the band. Well, that's the thing. Because momentum was propulsing your concentric, you never got to strengthen that top part, which is the hardest part, using your own brain and your own motor units to lift that part. So now you take the band off, you don't have that crutch anymore, so you can't do it. Okay, so that's why I much prefer building overall strength with eccentric or isometric progressions as a tool to get to do chins than to use a crutch that facilitates momentum, which makes it looks like you're progressing, but as soon as you take it out, you don't have that crutch, you don't have that tool, so you've never trained your ability to finish the rep at the top range. So to me, it's not a very good tool to actually build real results in the long run. What's my opinion on the goblet squat? Listen, if you're somebody who's never trained, who can't move, who can't squat, who's never been in a gym, Goblet squat is fine to kind of facilitate squatting pattern, build range of motion of the hip and knee joint and ankle and all that stuff. But aside from this, I mean, if if I have a 215-pound, 6'2" wide receiver comes up to me and he wants to get ready for the season, he's like, "Oh, Steph, let's do goblet squat." I mean, I don't think there's much this exercise is going to do. The loading potential is just so low. So I'm not really a fan, but again, every exercise is good. It just depends on who and when and how you're using it. So that's my opinion. If the goal is hypertrophy and you have 4 years training experience, in the intensification phase, do you train at 4 to 6 reps? And if so, what tempo? If your training age is 4 and you want hypertrophy, in the intensification phase, I like to focus more on load with that upper lower split. It can be 4 to 6. It could also be 3 reps. It could be 5 reps. It just depends where you are in your progression. But generally speaking, my intensification phases for hypertrophy will typically vary anywhere from 3 to 8 reps. Even for advanced people, it's just a matter of where that client is in his progression through these 4 years. Now, tempo, I mean, for hypertrophy purposes, intensification phase, I would still use 40x0, unless you purposely want to have a eccentric dominant phase where on certain key lifts you could add an eccentric method, like either extended eccentrics or supramax eccentrics, or you're doing eccentric only, where now obviously it could be a 6-second eccentric, 8-second eccentric, 10-second eccentric, but these would be like for very specific exercise throughout the week. It would not necessarily be every primary. If you were to do that with every primary, not many people would be able to recover from it. So yeah, generally speaking, 40x0, anywhere from 3 to 8 reps. What's a optimal ratio of pull-up, chin-up to rows for a healthy individual? So assuming you're healthy, I like a 1-to-1 ratio. So meaning your A2 exercise would be a chin-up variation, and then your B2 exercise would be a rowing variation. Now, that being said, your A series will typically have more sets, which makes it look like there's more emphasis on chin-ups, but you also have to keep in mind that although the B series will have a little bit less sets, it also has more reps for the most part. So the total volume kind of evens out, if you understand what I'm saying. So if I'm doing, let's say, 5x5 in the A series on my chin, that's a rep volume of 25. But now if I'm doing on my B2 for my C series, I'm doing, for my B series, I'm doing 3 sets of 8. Well, that's a rep volume of 24. So it's pretty much equal in terms of volume. So that's why I say a 1-to-1. Now, that being said, if you're an individual with shoulder issue, for example, then I like to dedicate an entire 12-week macro cycle where I don't do any chin. Okay, so you take out the chins from your A2 and you replace the A2 with another rowing variation. So for that entire macro, then rows would be your 100%. Okay, but for the most part, once you're done with that, most people will be fine doing that 1-to-1 ratio.